What's up? It's Dan Riccio and Randip and Dan. Evander Kane, he's a free agent after being bought out by the San Jose Sharks, and the situation currently under investigation to determine if the Sharks have cause for getting him off of their salary cap and out of the 3 years remaining on his current contract. But the reality is, Randip, teams are lining up at the chance of getting Evander Kane at a bargain deal for the remainder of this season. And the Edmonton Oilers are one of the favorites. Randip, should they do it?
Okay, 80% of the teams in the NHL probably should stay away from this deal because I don't know if the risk is worth the reward. But the Edmonton Oilers, they absolutely need to do this. If you get a player like Evander Kane, when he's on the ice, in a position to score, which he's going to probably get a chance to play top 6 minutes in Edmonton, that's a positive for the organization, for the team. If you have a physical presence like Evander Kane that could play a role on this Edmonton Oilers team, absolutely. He is a potential 30-goal scorer when he's on the ice and a physical presence. So for me, I think when you get an opportunity to sign a player like this, and you're Edmonton, who doesn't have any cap room, really, you're looking for value. This is value. You're desperate. They've lost 5 in a row. It's not looking good right now, and depth scoring has been an issue. Absolutely, the Edmonton Oilers should be in this conversation, need to be in this conversation. And I understand the backlash of why teams or why fans might not be happy with this. But if you're looking at a low cost, potential low, risk in the sense that if he acts up or if he does something wrong, you essentially say, you're out of here. I don't mind this move. I think it's something that they need for that team specifically.
There's a lot here. Obviously, there is a lot of baggage you would potentially be taking on with Evander Kane. This is not just, this wouldn't be a second chance, as Ken Holland put it the other day. It's, he's had quite a few chances at this point through his NHL career. He is a top-line scoring forward. That much we do know. You look at all of the numbers, and he is right there, is certainly, from a production standpoint, a top-line type of player. But Randip, these are all good things in theory. My question for you would be, what team has Evander Kane actually made better? Like, what team has gotten better because of Evander Kane's presence? Wasn't with Atlanta where he started. When they moved to Winnipeg, they couldn't wait to get him out of that locker room, as we know. Buffalo, he didn't do anything to help that team, and they were trying to get better when they acquired him. Of course, the San Jose Sharks, it was brief, but it seemed like, okay, maybe things are back on track. Joe Thornton's picking him up at the airport. This is fun. He does okay in that first year, but the Sharks have gone in the tank ever since. Like, what team has Evander Kane actually made a better hockey team? He's able to put up points. He's able to score goals. What team has he actually made better?
In the short term with San Jose, there was that bump. Call it the airport bump, call it the Jumbo Joe bump. I don't know what it was, but it did help. And I think a key thing with Evander Kane is that, I think the optimist in me would like to say, when he's with a strong leadership group, he doesn't act out. And there's an element of, maybe he can figure it out with a strong leadership group. Like that team had Jumbo Joe, they had Joe Pavelski, they had, go through the list of the players that they had. There was a pretty strong leadership group there. But the problem that I have with that argument is, in Winnipeg, they had a strong leadership group there as well. And I understand it was a younger Evander Kane, but it didn't work out there. So as many times as you want to say, hey, this could work out even in Edmonton, where they have Duncan Keith, they have a Mike Smith, they have a Darnell Nurse, Connor McDavid is the captain there. That doesn't guarantee anything. So it is always going to be a risk. I think what you have to have as a president of hockey operations, as the GM, is a no-nonsense rule. If it's going to work in Edmonton, if they sign him, if he's in a position to actually sign there without getting suspended, and teams are actually okay with him signing, because there may be discipline coming from the NHL at some point too, due to his latest cross-border move while he had COVID. This is something that you're looking at to say, hey, is that leadership group the right one to deal with Evander Kane if things go sideways, if they don't work out well? And that's something that the Edmonton Oilers are going to have to do a self-assessment, because there's no conclusive answer on this, Dan.
Our last video was about the Oilers and if they should be pushing the panic button. And, I was firmly on the side of yes. And I think this is exactly what that displays, Randy. They're desperate, man. Like, they are panicked. They don't know where they are going to get help from. And that's scary if you're the Edmonton Oilers. If you are Connor McDavid, that's scary. You know, you heard his comments, and yeah, I didn't like them either. I know a lot of people didn't, but it's because he's just looking at it like, can this guy help us win hockey games? Because currently we are not winning hockey games. And I think a lot of athletes, and we know a lot of teams, doesn't matter the sport, just look at the bottom line of the on-field perspective, the on-ice perspective, whatever it may be. Can this player help us win? And it is a very narrow way of thinking of it. And I think it has and will continue to get sports teams in trouble in the future. With this Evander Kane situation, like, I don't think Tampa is falling over themselves to go and sign Evander Kane. The Carolina Hurricanes, they can go out and trade for somebody, whatever. You know, there's other teams out there that could go out and get Evander Kane, but they're not desperate. The Oilers are desperate. They don't have salary cap space. Ken Holland does not want to trade a first-round pick, does not want to trade any of his top prospects. You can agree or disagree with that, whatever, but they don't want to do any of those things. So what is their only avenue? This is like, this has landed into their lap as potentially the saving grace of their season, even though, you know, it could potentially, I know things have already blown up in their face, but it could even get worse for this team, given Evander Kane's track record, as we've seen through his career.
I know I was the guy that was saying, hey, don't push the panic button, give this time. And it's true, right? But there is one glaring weakness on this team, and it is depth scoring. So down the road, I think what the Edmonton Oilers need to do here is they need to think about this and see what kind of potential discipline he faces. Don't rush into anything, because this is a big move. You are altering your locker room. You are altering the makeup of your room and the way that people perceive your team. Because you're right, Connor McDavid's comments were not well received. It is what it is a bad thing to say when you're talking about fan and media perception. So that's on the captain of the Edmonton Oilers to maybe not read the room and understand what's going on. Your team may be desperate, but looking ahead, there's probably a better way to communicate that messaging of to say, hey, due diligence will be done, and hopefully we'll see what happens in the future with this team. So I agree with you. It is a desperate move. In this sense, you know, Ken Holland doesn't have any other moves he can make. He doesn't have any other, you know, cap room to deal with. He doesn't want to make that deal, to your point, where he's looking at making a trade. So when you have that, you've got a potential Tom Wilson light pop up on the free agent screen. Whether you like Evander Kane and his antics or not, what GMs look at, what talent evaluators look at, is this guy has the potential of scoring 30 goals, and he's got 150 penalty minutes. He's taken on Ryan Reeves. He's lost, but nonetheless, he is a physical presence. That's something that GMs look at and say, okay, can we control him? And that's where, you know, Evander Kane, that's what the difficult situation is. On one side, you've got a very interesting character, somebody who has not been able to control himself clearly off the ice, and there's a lot of things going on there. But at the same time, that on-ice aspect is something Ken Holland is looking at and saying, maybe we can wrangle him in, and maybe he can work here in Edmonton with this leadership group.
Yeah, it's, I mean, the track record is long now, you know, of teams just kind of wanting to move on from Evander Kane. And the latest with the San Jose Sharks, you know, going back into the summer, and several reports out of San Jose saying they just don't want him around anymore. And then everything else that was happening off the ice. He starts with San Jose Barracuda. You know, it's been too much for me to say I'd be willing to do this. Like, if I'm a team, we can even zoom out from the Edmonton Oilers, and I, in a similar way to the way GMs approach a draft and they have guys on their do not draft list, like Evander Kane is just on my do not sign list. I don't know if I want to take that risk. The risk is not worth the reward. At least we haven't seen it through his career. But is there a spot you could see Evander Kane landing, Randy?
I could see, and I think this name has been brought up earlier this week. Joe Smith of The Athletic in Tampa Bay brought up the Tampa Bay Lightning, that they had thought about it at the very least. That's a situation where I look at it and say, they are so set in their way, where if you come into that team, you know what to expect, and any acting out, you're gone. So I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning to say, they're kind of like the New England Patriots right now, where you follow their way. They have a winning culture, and they might take a chance every now and then, maybe a risk to pick up a player. But if it doesn't work out, they don't strike me as an organization that's very shy to say, all right, see you later. It didn't work out. So I look at that organization and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I was not surprised to hear that link earlier this week. Whether that continues, probably not at this point in time, given the more recent news about Evander Kane and the border issues and how the NHL is investigating, and potentially even Canadian Border Services might be involved as well, which might not exactly push a lot of teams to try to sign Evander Kane. So I look at the Lightning, though, as that one team, one situation. Maybe it could work at the very least. If it doesn't, you can cut ties pretty quickly.
Story is certainly not over. We'll see how this develops with Evander Kane, how the investigation plays out. In the meantime, there is still speculation. If you're the Edmonton Oilers, would you sign Evander Kane? If you're anybody, would you sign Evander Kane? Let us know in the comments. We try to respond to as many as we can. Subscribe to the Sportsnet channel, and we'll see you in the next video.